Hey y'all, today we're going to review square roots and perfect squares, but before we do that, I have a few shout outs to give. Shout outs for my class in Harvard. At Princeton, Yale, I haven't looked at your MOQs yet, but huge shout out going to two students who scored mastery, Dontrell and Terry-Andre, super proud of you, and then 3 students in Harvard who got advanced, Zach, Ashante, and Jarius, big shout outs to you. Double shout out going to Jarius and Ashante for scoring 100% on Tuesday's MLQ. All right, we're going to jump right into it. First thing I want you to do, maybe pause this video. I have a number line right now. It's going from -8 to +8. Pause this video and draw a number line in your notes as well. All right, if you're coming back, you've got that number line. And we're going to start with the square root of 36. This goofy looking, kind of looks like a Nike check sign. This means square root. And when I'm asking for the square root of something, I'm asking for what number times itself gives me the number inside. So I want to find the square root of 36. Another way I can ask that is, what number times itself gives us 36? Well, I'm thinking, what number times itself, or what number to the second power is 36? I know that 6 times 6 is 36, and that's the same number 6 times itself. 6 times 6 is 36. That works. I also know that -6 times -6 is 36 because a negative times a negative makes a positive. So my answer for the square root of 36, it could be positive or -6. If you didn't do this yesterday, this plus minus sign means positive or negative. Let's do another example with a perfect square. I want to know, what is the square root of 64? Another way I can ask that question is, what number times itself will give me 64? Well, is 64 a perfect square? Is there a number times itself? Yes, there is. 8 times 8 is 64. I also know that -8 times -8 is 64. So the square root of 64 is positive or negative 8. Cool, now we're going to take a look on some that are not quite perfect. So let's start off with this one. I'm going to start off with the square root of 20. The square root of 20. And I want to know, what is the square root of 20, or what number times itself gives me 20? Is there a number? I know that 10 plus 10 is 20, but I'm looking for a number times itself. And 10 times 10 does not equal 20. Nope, 20 is not a perfect square, so we're going to have to make a good guess. First thing I want to identify is, what are the perfect squares on each side? I want to know between what 2 whole numbers is my answer going to fall? Well, I know that there's a perfect square that's a little bit bigger than 20, and that perfect square is 25. And I know that there's a perfect square that's a little bit smaller than 20, and that perfect square is 16. I would suggest doing this a lot, or every time you're trying to find it out, because sometimes we make silly mistakes and we pick a number that's too big or too small, and then our answer doesn't end up being as precise as it could be. So I know that the square root of 20 falls somewhere in between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25. Well, the square root of 16, or the number times itself that gives us 16, is positive or negative 4. And I know that the square root of 25, or the number times itself that gives me 25, is positive or negative 5. So that means that the square root of 20 has to be somewhere in between 4 and 5, or somewhere in between -4 and -5. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this on my number line. I'm going to find 4 and 5. I'm going to put a dot in between. That's the square root of 20. So I know that this goes between 4 and 5. I also need to find my -4 and my -5. Square root of 20 right there as well. Perfect. Let's do another example. I want to know, what is the square root of 39? First thing I want to know is there a number times itself that gives me 39? No, 39 is not a perfect square. So we want to find out between what 2 whole numbers does it lie. Well, I know a perfect square that's a little bit smaller than 39. That perfect square is 36. And I also know a perfect square that's a little bit bigger than 39, and that perfect square is 49. Now I want to find out about what is the square root of 39. Well, the square root of 36, or what number times itself gives you 36? Well, that's positive or negative 6. And the square root of 49, what number times itself is 49? That's a positive or negative 7. You should notice that these numbers that are on both sides of the square root you're trying to figure out should be consecutive integers. So this is 6 and then 7. They will always go in order. You'll never have like 5 and then 7 or 3 and then 6. They're always going to go one after each other. So I'm just going to double check 6, 7. Yes, I'm in the right order, and I have the right scope for this. So the square root of 39 is somewhere in between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49, which means it's somewhere in between 6 and 7, or negative 6 and negative 7. Go ahead and graph that on your number line. 6 and 7 are here. So this is the square root of 39. And negative 6, negative 7, square root of 39. We're going to do one more problem. I want to know, what is the square root of 62? What number times itself gives me 62? Is there a number? No, not in this case. But I want to find the perfect squares that are one perfect square lower and one perfect square higher. Well, 62, I know that there's a perfect square that's really close to that. That number is 64. And I know that there's a perfect square that's a little bit smaller than that, and that is 49. Now I want to double check that these are consecutive. The square root of 49, or what number times itself, gives you 49. That number is 7, and it could be positive or negative. What's the square root of 64, or what number times itself gives you 64? That could be positive or negative 8. Do I have two consecutive numbers in a row? 7, 8. Yes, these are right in a row, 7 and then 8. That's the right order, so I know that I'm good. I know that the square root of 62 is somewhere in between positive 7 and positive 8, or somewhere in between negative 7 and negative 8. I'm going to go ahead and graph that. I'll start with the negative side. This is going to be between negative 7 and negative 8. That's the square root of 64. Oh, and y'all, I made this 6. Nope, we're good. And between positive 7 and positive 8 is going to be on this side, square root of 64. You have the rest of your packet to do. The problems at the bottom, you're going to be graphing them, and then also the back side. Do this independently at a 0. Good luck.